Welcome to this week of Missouri Politics. Busy week in the Capitol. No time to go through a featured guest. We have a panel of 4 legislators who are actually doing work this week, unlike the Senate. Starting with Representative Kurtis Gregory from Great North Missouri. Welcome back to the show.
Well, West Central Missouri, but that's
Central.
Close enough. Saline County.
Dirk Deaton from Pineville. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Yeah, good to be back.
Representative Marlene Terry from St. Louis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And from the south side of St. Louis, Representative Donna Barringer. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Interesting week. Maybe there's more when the personal drama hits. The legislative drama kind of stalls, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Senate did the FRA this week. Gosh, it just seems like it's too big of a deal to jack around with, but you can't tell that to the suburban members of the Missouri Senate.
I really don't understand why people would want to bankrupt us by holding up the FRA. So for the fact that they've been holding the FRA over in the Senate, and we've waited over in the House for this work, and I know you started out by saying we had a busy week, but actually in the House, we just kept waiting and waiting.
The St. Louis Republicans just don't care. They don't care. I mean, where's the closest hospital from Pineville?
Joplin.
There might be a clinic in Joplin without the FRA. It's just bizarre to me how, I guess if you live in St. Louis, you just don't care, right?
You know, I mean, I think for some people, they realize if it's must-pass legislation, whatever it is, it becomes less about the substance, and it becomes potentially a this for that. If you're telling me we have to do this, then I'm telling you there's some things that I think we have to do, and unfortunately, I think we've seen this become victim to that, and it happened 3 years ago, which I think is why the House has taken the position that it has and waiting for the Senate. I mean, 3 years ago, we passed the FRA 1,000 different times in 1,000 different ways, and it never mattered. It didn't seem to make a difference. And then finally they were able to, get something in a special session, and we did the thing. And so we'll pass, I think, whatever the Senate now has mustered up as far as the FRA. We're going to pass it. We were always going to pass it, and it's been frustrating it's taken them this long. And
there's no question you've been the adults in the room on this issue. I mean, this issue the Senate has jacked with, leveraged, and it's really leveraging by senators from the suburbs who probably will still have a hospital against folks in rural Missouri that won't have health care for 4 hours a drive. I mean, the House has been the response. Tell folks how important getting that done is. I mean, you're the man in the room with the pencil.
Yes, it's rural areas, but it's our suburban and urban areas as well. And it's not just hospitals. It's ambulance districts. It's nursing homes. This is a tax that we use to fund all healthcare providers and all healthcare in the state at every level, certainly hospitals, and that's the most obvious, but all the way down to the ambulances, being able to, if somebody has an emergency, and it's really not rural, urban, suburban. It would be devastating to the entire state, which is why it's always been a question of when it passes, not if. And so I'm happy that we've finally gotten some movement on it. We're going to be able to get it done. It looks like in the regular session, which, we should have always been able to, and it shouldn't really be a question, but unfortunately there has been some question around, would we get it done in the regular session or would it take another special session? And, I'm happy that it appears that, we won't have to do that this year.
President Gregory, your jaw drops when you hear these people just speak so cavalierly about closing hospitals. Well, the entire 8th District might have a hospital in it if they get their way. It's just bizarre to be so cavalier about people's real Missourians' lives.
Oh, we've got Fitzgibbon Hospital right there, Marshall, Missouri.
It's gone.
Yeah, so that's my
if
local.
The suburban Republicans have their way, it's gone.
My local hospital people messaging me going, "What's going on? Like, we need to make sure."
Do you tell them honestly? Do you honestly tell them?
I say it's just a complicated situation. I said ultimately, I think it gets worked out.
You're a very nice man.
If Fitzgibbon closes in Marshall, and it's we've got emergency room,
it will close.
Cardiac, like just some great.
Sir, is it an if or a when? If you don't pass an FRA, his hospital will close, right?
It would be devastating.
Wow.
What the impacts would be, I mean, we're going to have to likely fill that hole somehow, some way, and it'd have to come from somewhere. But the impact would be immeasurable. What it would look like after the fact. It's really just.
Well, it would look like there's no hospital in Marshall.
We're not going to let it happen.
Then our closest is Sedalia, 30 minutes. Then obviously you got 2 in Columbia, Boone, and University. And then, the smaller one, just one up in Lexington, I think maybe a small one in Carrollton. But, Marshall's a population of 15,000 people. But, yeah, then Lexington, Carrollton goes, potentially Bothwell down in Sedalia, 30,000 people down there. So then you're looking at an hour to Kansas City or an hour to Columbia.
And this is a tax that the providers are taxing themselves on, that is going to be matched with federal money. And that
3-1, right?
Right. And that's free money. And this is us just throwing money down the drain if we don't pay
Well,
it.
do you ever look over and say, I mean, it's easy to say, well, the city slickers are doing this. It's not the city slickers. It's the cul-de-sacians that are doing this out in the suburbs. I mean, it's the suburban Republicans' open warfare on the constituents of the rural Republican senators. I mean,
what really horrified me was, it brought back memories of this winter when the nursing home closed in St. Louis City and how so many people was displaced. So that's so disheartening that such an important issue is being act like, it's a game. You can toss it around like a ball. So that kind of hurts, and we need those. We, like you said, ambulance services, we're waiting already hours to get services there's a need all across the state. So that's very important, and it shouldn't be played.
Prediction, doesn't FRA get done during regular session?
Oh, I'm not sure. And I say to myself, they have to know better, but then I say to myself, they don't know better. So I think we'll have a special session.
What do you think?
I hope so.
Do they do this? I think the FRA, I would say, done in regular session. What do you think?
I believe we get it done at this point.
What do you think?
Yes.
I think that's right. Now,
Prediction cotton.
Now we've got Dirk here. Let's talk about the budget. It feels like, if I were you, the worm has turned a little bit. All of a sudden now you see the senators coming to your office saying, what can we do? How do we accommodate you? It must feel good to feel like, well, maybe the worm's turned a little bit here.
Well, usually at this juncture, frankly, normative order, which this session isn't anything but normative, I suppose, we would have already seen a budget, come back from the Senate. We'd already maybe be, talking about conferencing, maybe already have started that. And, that's yet to happen. A budget's yet to be produced. There's open communication, and I think that's always good. Yep. And conversations are certainly happening, and I think people realize we're running out of time, and it's going to take a Herculean effort from everybody, frankly, to get it done. Because with the budget, it's a little different than a policy bill. I mean, even once a decision has been arrived at, it takes time to draft these bills. It needs to lay on the calendar. We have a hard deadline,
if
and
you just went
we're
to
quickly approaching it.
The budget bills, that would take 2 days to go through all the motions and all the roll call votes. If you had to do that, it would take 2 full days to make that happen. I mean, it's lengthy, as it should be. Kurtis, it is very interesting to see the change in attitude at the Senate in the budget process. They are very interested in making sure the chairman and vice chairman here are very accommodated. I'm not sure they have that same degree of urgent care for their needs as they do this year in the past.
Well, Scott, I listened to a decent amount of Senator Probst's hearings when I was in the tractor, planting corn and everything else, because, there wasn't much else to do. I might as well listen in and see what the Senate's up to, right? And unlike prior years where it was, maybe 8 Senate positions to 1 House position, this year it was more like 8 House positions to 1 Senate position.
Yep.
So I would really like to see, some cooler heads prevail. Dirk, looking at you. When we're doing those negotiations,
Luke's the problem.
And I trust, and I trust our leadership that we're going to do the right thing. We've got a constitutional deadline. I do believe it's 6:00 next Friday or this upcoming Friday. That cooler heads prevail and we're able to get something done, and not let the people of Missouri down, because mostly House positions are stuck in that right now out of Senator Probst's committee.
So when you look at this, I mean, the issues have really been an advantage of the House Democrats, because you've been able to come over, get most of what you want, do a deal in conference. Really, the Republicans getting together on the same page is not necessarily good for you guys, right?
Well, that's all I got is the budget. I've been on pins and needles, though. I just can't wait till it's over, because that's what I take home. I'm able to take things home to the community, and so it keeps me, not sleeping at night that is not completed.
Donna, you are an old-school St. Louis politician that knows how to work the gears of government. It has been a very good time for you to be able to take advantage of maybe the House and Senate proposed not be on the same page. It's been a great position for the Democrats to be in. How happy are you to see the senators coming over and saying, "Oh, Chairman Smith, how do we accommodate you?"
I think it's wonderful, because I have that nightmare of what happened a couple of years ago where it was the opposite way, where we sent the budget over and they just tore it apart and did all the piecemeal for themselves, and then ran over to the House and stood in the House gallery and were yelling at us from the side saying, you better pass our budget, not our state's budget, but their budget. So it feels good.
Give me the prediction of how this ends up. Do you pass a budget during regular session?
Once again, I hope so, but boy, my level of expectations this session are really low.
What do you think?
I'm keeping faith all this session. I'm just living off of faith.
Okay, I'll be the
living on faith.
German. I'll say there's more money to be raised from lobbyists from the budget. And the FRA, I don't think folks that are trying to manipulate this can raise money on this FRA. I think you can raise money from lobbyists if you send the budget to special session. So I think you have to pull some rabbits out of your hats. I think you're going to special session on the budget. You're the man that would know. What do you think?
I think, the right people are prepared to do everything, we can to see if we can get there. But there's a lot of things working against us, and the clock is first and foremost among those. The Senate, I understand, and the committee did take more House positions than generally has been accustomed to. That bar is pretty low, frankly. Usually they want as many comfortable positions, it seems to me, as possible, and I understand why that is. But their budget, I think, is around $53 billion. Ours is closer to 50. So there's $3 billion worth of differences that I think are unimportant and, have to be considered as well. There's other structural things in the budget that the House really cares about that, have to be looked at. And so I think there's still a long ways to go and a lot of work to be done to where I think we need to end up. But, I'm hopeful
like
we can get there in the next several days.
It feels like if you, Chairman Smith, Chairman Huff are in a room, obviously Pat Thomas, then it feels like a deal can be found. It's just that's not the deal. He's got to go sell it to some folks who probably have political advantages to send this to special session, right? I mean, you can go get your caucus on board and roll with this. He's got to go sell it to some folks who probably the only deal they want is no deal.
I think you're right. To some extent, this is out of the House's control. And
you've done a very good job, though, of keeping control this year. And I've seen those.
Whether or not we go to a special session.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
I could see things going such a way next week that if a budget's never produced, then we can never go to conference. We could never even consider a budget that would come back to us if it's not produced. And so you're left with the Senate, truly agreeing the House budget as is, which I would be okay with, or a special session. And again, these things at some point are outside of any of our individual, ability by which to control them. And so we just have to do the very best we can, work as hard as we can, get up tomorrow and do it again and just see if we can find a way.
Give me a prediction. It feels like there's some people. I mean, I think the Senate this time has taken a ton of House positions. I don't think that was by accident. I think they're trying, but I do think at the end of the day, they've got some senators who are probably politically advantaged to force us to special session. What do you think happens?
I think there's just as many legislators that are politically advantaged to get a budget passed by the deadline this coming Friday at 6 p.m.
Yes, but next year I think you'll say, well, one senator can decide we're not doing this. And it looks like IGO Incorporated has 4 other folks that are willing to be Scottie Pippins. And 5 senators, I think we saw, can hold the floor 40 hours. If you don't care about the outcome, you can blow it up, right?
I understand that if you don't care about the outcome. But, looking at those campaigns, you're going to have to be explaining to people that message of why we didn't do our job. Like, that's what's been told to me from my first day down here is our technical only job down here is to get a budget done. That's the only thing we have to do. We have to get that budget done.
Well, I'm going to see if you'll, maybe not give a special session, but you'll still have one more segment with us on This Week in Missouri Politics. We'll be right back after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople, while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
When I take office, the first thing I'm going to do when my hand comes off the Bible is enact our Day One crime plan.
Kehoe's plan: support law enforcement, remove liberal prosecutors, crack down on illegal immigration and sanctuary cities, charge fentanyl dealers with murder.
Those things are what it takes to be tough on crime and make sure that we get our communities back.
Endorsed by law enforcement, Mike Kehoe for governor. Paid for by the American Dream PAC.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back. This week of Missouri Politics. The second half of the show, we convince everybody to stick around. Representative Donna Barringer from South City, thank you for sticking around.
Thank you for having me.
Representative Marlene Terry from St. Louis, thank you for staying. Dirk Deaton from Southwest Missouri, as Southwest Missouri as you can possibly get, right?
That's right.
Down in the corner
Oklahoma, Arkansas,
and McDonald County.
That's right.
And Kurtis Gregory, I'm not going to say the great Northwest, even though it feels like if I were you, I'd want to leverage myself into that, from Marshall County, or Saline County and Marshall. You had the endless investigation of the speaker come to an end this week. It ended as bizarrely as the thing was. Rehashing it's probably too boring to do, but at the end of the day, you had to feel kind of good for Dean Plogger. Even if you don't feel good for him, you had to feel good for his family.
Not just for him, not just for his family, but I think, the House as a whole, that it's over with and it's behind us. All along I've said there's a process to these things, and let's let that process play out, and that's the Ethics Committee investigation, and that finally got wrapped up and everything was dismissed, and I think it's good for the House.
Donna Barringer, this was not a good look for the Missouri House of Representatives.
No.
Look, I'll say, Dean's the leader, should have kept his expenses right, but the rabbit holes, it reminded me of the Wiley Price thing, going down all these different rabbit holes that weren't part of the complaint. The word witch hunt is overused, but boy, this smelled a little bit like one.
All I can tell you is I tell people when they ask me, where are you at it? What's going on? I say, I don't want to know. I want nothing to do with any information at all about what's going on. And the reason is because I don't understand why all of a sudden people will submit things against other people. And the person that's being accused doesn't even know until they're told by the ethics committee, and that's kind of scary.
Marlene Terry, you should have got hazardous duty pay and combat pay this session. You had to go through this thing, and I wouldn't ask you about the details of it. I have no idea. Overall, it feels like this process could be better. You've had to live the worst of this. Is a person right to think right now, if they're watching this, and our state representative Hardy Billington in Poplar Bluff, if someone would file a complaint, do you think this process is as good as you can do, or is there some tweaks you could make after seeing this lengthy affair?
There are some tweaks that could be made. It will be looked at, I'm sure. And lengthy process is an understatement. It seemed like we were there forever. And as far as not a good look, it's not. Anytime we have to especially try to reprimand one of our own in the House, that's the sad part about
it. It was a terrible situation when you're asked to have to overrule the chair.
Yeah.
It was a bizarre scene. I watched it on film. I can't imagine how bizarre it was sitting in the room.
Yeah. And you used the word witch hunt. If I have to put it into perspective on my part, it should have been ended a day or two after it started. And so what I'm going to say behind that, without trying to say too much, is that sometimes people are a little personal and have personal vendettas, and that's what it looked like to me. It had nothing to do with an issue that was in hand. That's why I say it got too carried away. As an ethic person, we were trying to appease each other as to how, what should be listened to. And it just got carried away. And it was unfortunate for our speaker because it brought damage, as far as I'm concerned, to his family as well. And it's totally unnecessary.
I mean, it did feel like at some point in this, you're going to have to put some stopgaps in the system. I mean, if a person can't be found innocent, then there's not a real process, right? And even then, at the end, it was still, well, we didn't find anything, but it's your fault we didn't find anything. The process seems like more senior members like yourself need to take a look at it, right?
Every 2 years, we take a look at the rules. I'm sure in the next General Assembly,
It tells me you're going to take a closer look at the rules this year.
will be looked at. I think a lot of the rules deserve a close look. And, you know, it's unfortunate. You talked about the process, and I'm sure it's not a perfect process. It probably can never be a perfect process just due to the nature of what it is. And it is the process we had as of now, and I'm happy that it's been disposed and people can make whatever they will. But it's nice to have it behind us, and the committee rendered their judgment and they dismissed it. And I'm, you know, hopefully glad we can move on now.
Next session, you're going to be at the top of House leadership. Does the staff that you hire work for you or some bureaucracy? You know, do you hire your people and do they report to you? Or should they?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody knows if they do now.
You know, that's a question we probably need to drill down on.
What do you think? Should your legislative liaison, your chief of staff, work for you?
Yeah, I think they should, you know, work for the members. There's always been some conversations, you know, does the speaker, are they able to speak into that? Can they overrule? And that's been done in the past. And so, you know, should the members have absolute autonomy? Should the speaker have veto power? Should the accounts chair? Should the chief clerk? And those are all fair questions.
The Senate doesn't have this drama because everybody that's on the staff works for the senator. And so there's no drama.
Well, it's me. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's because I'm on admin accounts. And the reason the Senate is different is because they get a dollar amount and they can choose to hire a secretary and a policy person or just pay one person.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing, but what I'm saying, in the House, it's not set up that way.
So you just set it up that way.
Well, I have wondered, how can we? But it's currently not set up that way.
They don't have their staff having these little infighting, little petty things where they're manipulating members off each other because they work for the member. And the members are supposed to clash. That's what you're here for. But the staff, you don't have the problem with the kids. You just don't.
But just remember, there's 163 state reps, and that's 163 LAs possibly. And if they're sharing, let's cut it in half. But it's a lot of people. And so we have a human resources department personnel that they go to so that we can make sure we're following the law.
After following this process, God bless those people. That must be a terrible job. Let's talk about an issue that comes to the legislature, IP reform. The Senate passed to say, hey, should it be harder to amend the Constitution? The House took it and said, why don't we wedge every possible thing we can do to distract folks in it? They cleaned Missouri, right? I respected Dean Plogger. I interviewed Dean Plogger on Tuesday. He said, yeah, we kind of took that playbook, the court's rule was legal, and used it. Is it fair to say, hey, we're going to manipulate this process just like the Democrats did to get what we want?
Well, let's talk about his petition for a second. I've got here in 2021, and we passed this petition out of the House. Didn't go anywhere. 2022, guess what? We passed it out of the House. Gets to the Senate. I think it made it to the floor for a brief second. Didn't go anywhere. Last year, we passed an initiative petition. I think it came out of the House at a 53 or 54% threshold, Dirk. Nod your head. I think that's right. It goes to the Senate. It gets debated. I think it comes back to the House at 57. We go to a conference committee report. I think we agreed on 55. I'm shooting from the top of my head in distant memory. The House passes the conference committee report on May 9th, and it doesn't get taken up for final passage. It was one vote away in the Senate last year also. We're sitting in that same place again on concurrent majority. There's been talk ever since I got down here on what's best. Is it a percentage threshold? Is it upping the signature requirement? Is it concurrent majority? On House
we're adding all these distractions in. The things every Republican sat at this table and said, that's wrong, Clean Missouri is a scam, it's shady. This is just as shady, right?
Yes, no, maybe so. When you look at it, and it's being touted as stopping illegal citizens from voting in Missouri elections, if you read it, it's actually all it does is I think it's inside of Chapter 8.
It actually distracts people to pass what you want to pass. Dirk Deaton, every Republican sat in here and said, Clean Missouri, which was shady. It wasn't. I don't think it was a scam, but it was shady. You took a bunch. They wanted to change the gerrymander of the districts. Fair enough. They added a bunch of nonsense in to try to distract people. That's what the Republicans are doing. I mean, to me, it's fine to admit it. Just say, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I don't view it in quite that same light. I mean, Clean Missouri, I agree, although the court said it withstood scrutiny.
Terrible.
I thought it was inappropriate to do, lobbyist gifts along with the statewide demographer and elections, and you're clearly mixing things at this point. In this case, we're dealing with elections, and, should only citizens be able, under any circumstances, for any election in the state, be able to vote. Yes, I think that's very common sense, and we see jurisdictions across the country that seem to disagree with that.
A lot of Mexican nationals vote
inappropriate to put that in there, along with how our initiative petition process, which is elections by definition, should work. And so there's a case with people with certain legal statuses but not citizenship that likely could find themselves becoming a registered voter. You don't have to.
It's justify the means.
You don't have to prove citizenship. You show up at the county clerk's office with a driver's license. Doesn't mean you're a citizen. They'll register you to vote. And so we need to make sure the protections are in place.
When you're leaving the polling place
border
in Pineville, do you see a lot of Mexicans coming in?
I think people across the state are concerned about our elections, the security of them. We've got millions of illegal aliens in this country, and tens, hundreds of thousands across the state of Missouri. And, it's a real concern with people back home. I mean, I hear about it as much as anything, to be honest with you.
I sit on elections, and we've heard every IP, okay, every single bill, and there's ballot candy and such. And so...
Just like there was with Clean Missouri, right?
Well...
The same type of ballot candy.
I'm just saying.
Every Democrat that I had sat at this table told me, no, that's fine to put these things together. It's totally good. Well, except for Ashley Blaine Manlove. She said, no, I will give her credit. But every Democrat said, no, Clean Missouri, it's all good. This is a totally good way to do this. Now, are you not as hypocritical as the Republicans are now? Is it not just a bunch of hypocrisy? Clean Missouri was ballot candied just like this is ballot candied. It's shady. You did it. Now they're doing it. Fair's fair, right?
Well, what I can tell you about what's going on with the current IP, because that's what I want to talk about.
Shady, right? Shady.
No. I asked in committee how many illegal aliens have voted in the state of Missouri, and they can't find one.
Of course not.
And what I'm trying to tell people is that they're wanting you to come and vote on this, but they're asking you to make it so you can't have a say through the initiative petition reform, but us as a legislature don't have to go through the same scrutiny to put something on the ballot. And that's where I find hypocrisy, because if we're going to do it to the people, let's do it to ourselves.
With a minute left, though, Kurtis Gregory, who won the week?
I'm going to go with the Norm Stewart family.
Ah, yes.
Inducted into the Hall of Famous Missourians. I think he's the 51st, if I saw correctly. Just what a great guy, what a great story. Shelbyville, Missouri. I just wish he would have told the story about the state of Kansas.
And won the week.
I'll say Jay Ashcroft. I've not really seen much of his campaign, but every poll keeps him at 40%. And so, you got to feel pretty good when you aren't even hearing about much.
You got to feel good, right? Who won the week?
I'm going to go with what he said because, hey, it's been a right long week with not much done.
All right. I'm going to say Ruby, right?
Yes, Ruby won the week because she is my emotional support dog. And as Truman said, if you want a friend in Washington, D.C., get a dog. So I did. I got a puppy.
Ben Baker stole the show. You got that at the auction.
Yes, I did.
For the women legislators.
That's right.
What an awesome thing. What a beautiful dog.
Yes.
Thank you very much for supporting them, Ruby.
Ruby,
you can't beat that on who won the week. But I would say Lincoln Huff. Just when you think the old boy can't pull it off, he pulls off an FRA 4:30 in the morning. I think Lincoln, you didn't win the week as much as Ruby, but good week for you. We'll see you back here next week for This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.